it's the absolute opinions about this stuff that drives me nuts. And it's not just the affordability argument. It's things like who it benefits. It's what the risks of open bidding could be. It's the thought that open bidding is an all or nothing approach, which hopefully now is being, I mean, it's been mentioned, but nothing's been dived into enough. Is it dived or dove? Nothing's been looked at closely enough.
Building a successful real estate career requires you to adapt, pivot, and constantly master new skills.
We're Katie and Daniel Steinfeld. We've built our own innovative brokerage, and in this podcast, we've assembled actionable tips and strategies that you can implement to take your business to its maximum potential.
It's time to level up. Level up. Level up.
Hello once again. It's time for Level Up. I'm Daniel.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm here with Katie.
This is Katie.
Oh, hi, Katie. It's good to see you.
We've started interrupting each other a lot on these podcasts.
What was that? Sorry.
Anyway.
We should talk like we actually talk in real life, I guess, which is constantly interrupting. I don't really think, do we really interrupt? I don't think we do. We're pretty respectful.
I listened to our last podcast and we interrupted each other a few times. It wasn't that bad, but yeah.
I've yet to listen to it, and I was about to interrupt you to say that, but nonetheless, I'll be more conscious. Is it me that does it, or both of us do it to each other?
No, it's both of us. I think because you tend to go a little long, I feel the need to interrupt halfway through sometimes.
I tend to go long. I think we should start to develop. First of all, I want to develop analytics on what that looks like now, because I agree with you. I know I go long. But I do think you've developed that as well. Once upon a time, it was me being the ranter, but you've got a good rant to yourself as well now too. I'd be curious how it's developed over time.
We should time it out.
Now I could see you being conscious. I see you being conscious of that. You didn't even want to talk. It's like you're keeping your vocal time down now.
No, you're right. Everybody has a tendency, for the most part, I think, to go long with all of their answers. I was just recording a video this morning, like about just how to make your offer more competitive with conditions. And I just blab on and on. Thank God for editing, because like I can condense it, but geez.
And where can people find this video? I see what you're doing. I see the plug.
My Instagram at katie.steinfeld. Check it out.
It's a good spot. I too put up a post on my Instagram this morning, but it's less relevant.
What is your post about?
It's about, I happen to be running for director at large in the upcoming Treb election. To those, I think by the time this episode is out there, the voting might already be over. Actually, you know what? I think this episode is going to be coming out on the last day of voting. So if you're listening and you're a realtor and it's prior to May 17th, get out there and vote. And
you're a member of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board.
That's true. Or you know someone who is. And who doesn't? There's 70,000 of us.
That's true. It's like one in every, like you should know at least 3 on average.
On average. Anyway, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about open bidding. Oh my God.
Oh, my favorite. This is
rev your engines.
Quite literally my favorite. And I apologize in advance because
of all the days of ranting,
if there was ever a topic that merits a good rant, it's this one. So I put it on you, and I will do the same for you to keep each other in check and to make this a conversation and not a sermon.
So okay, we should have a
let's reset the room.
We should have an agreement before, and if you guys are watching on video, you'll see this. If one of us feels like the other person is going too long or ranting too long, we should just like have a signal like this, like cut it off type thing.
I agree, even though it's hurtful because I know it's going to be coming.
No, but I think it's a good warning. And I'm not saying just cut it off right away, but just know, like, wrap it up because you're going too long.
Right. Your point has been made.
Yes.
You know, and I'm about to go on a rant, not about open bidding, but this is something that I've noticed listening to radio, especially sports radio. And I think I do this, and I'm going to be more conscious about not doing it, but this is every discussion on sports radio. And you're going to hear it now when you're listening, even talk radio. People start a sentence and a thought, and prior to getting to the thought, they cut themselves off.
Oh yeah. I do that all the time. Oh yeah. I notice that about myself. It's
It's
So
uncanny.
distracting, but it's distracting too.
It's distracting to the listener. And as a listener, you just want them to get to the bloody point.
Yeah.
But they cut themselves off and go on a tangent, which
true.
really is usually only relevant to like their own personal experience. Like they reach back into their own vault of garbage nobody wants to hear about.
Well, I think when you're talking, your mind kind of goes in two different directions, and you kind of think of other relevant points you want to make along the way, and then you can go off on these really bad tangents. I do the same thing, and that's why I listen to our podcasts a lot of times. It's just to like figure out like the little tendencies that we have and try to fix them for future podcasts.
We have lots. And you've brought up one. And that's another one that we probably do that maybe we'll be more cognizant of now.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let's get to the
open
point.
bidding. All right. So if you've been listening to us at all, if you're not living under a rock, which most people hopefully are not, open bidding is a now more than ever big topic in real estate, especially in Canada, especially in Ontario. And I think we can take this in a lot of different directions, but keeping it on topic and keeping it current, this is now something that has been introduced by the Ontario government as a concept that will be put in some way, shape, or form into law or into, can I say law?
Can I correct you and say federal government?
Well, the federal government has talked about, well, yeah, but the changes to TRESA are only for Ontario.
Oh, you're talking about that. Sorry, I thought you were talking about
I can qualify this. This is a lot. There's a lot of different directions this is going in, and everybody's talking about it. So maybe I won't keep it provincial because you're right. But I mean, on a regulatory side, there's been announced changes to Ontario rules coming. What?
You're getting very loud. Like
I'm so passionate about this.
Maybe just move away from the mic a little bit.
I feel like I want to talk to the world. The microphone's right here. Okay, fine. You hear me fine when I'm back here? I'm still loud when I'm back here.
100%.
Oh boy, what are we? We're like 6 minutes in and we're still diagnosing our shortcomings as podcasters. But no, so anyway, this is a topic that if you don't know what open bidding is, and many people don't, because people throw this around like, I don't know, they just throw it around like something that has a standard definition. Yeah. It's really the opportunity to know what other bids look like in an open real estate offer situation. Mm-hmm. And that in itself can take a lot of different definitions. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think we can talk about I think there's a lot of confusion surrounding all of these announcements. Also, Korea put out an announcement. So anybody that's listening in Canada knows that the Canadian Real Estate Association just recently announced a partnership they have with a company called Open to disclose the contents of offers, more so just it depends on the province and what's allowed to be disclosed, I guess. But for Ontario, it would be the number of offers received on a property at the moment. But that's something that's also brought a lot of confusion as to what actually is happening there. What's interesting to me is that I want it to bring confusion now because people don't know what's going on. And I think the people who claim to know what's going on are wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, this is where I'm just the a-hole who is one of those people who claims to know what's going on. But when I read people who talk about these different announcements and treat them with, here's what this means, mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, that's not what it means. Like the announcement you just brought up about Korea and Open, and we won't dive too deep in the weeds in that.
No.
But you're right. You made a very important point there that the announcement that was made was purposely vague by Korea, mm-hmm. saying we're going to bring transparency to real estate in Canada, which is true in terms of their intent. However, they then didn't disclose any more about what this partnership means, and rather just put a bio of the company they partnered with, which spoke about all the things that company does and is capable of in Australia, which are fantastic things, but most of them are not allowed in Canada right now and won't be in certain jurisdictions for quite some time. So I think a discussion for another day might be diving in deeper to that. As you know, I spoke to the representative from Open last week and got from the horse's mouth specifically what it is that's happening. And I do applaud what they're doing. And as you know, we're big fans of transparency, but I don't want people to go too far down the road in thinking they know what that means or what it represents, because Korea and by association realtor.ca, which they run and own, are not a regulatory body and don't get to make the rules. They still have to abide by the existing regulations, which are very restrictive right now. So that being said, open bidding is a topic. It has been since before we started in real estate, but especially when we started our brokerage and our auction company. We did that on the tail of probably the first time that open bidding as a concept really became something people were trying to talk about.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's two, like, very distinct differences between, like, just even the concept of open bidding in real estate, because there's auction companies which currently aren't within Ontario regulated under the same real estate rules. But there's also the idea of opening up offers in a non-auction way, which I think is the direction that the industry is probably heading towards a little bit, and how that's going to operate is a big question, because there's a lot of components to obviously an offer that it's like, what do you open it up to, and how many chances do you give people and all that. I feel like an auction is more of a efficient way of opening things up and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. But
yeah, it's a vehicle for a form of
Mm-hmm.
open bidding. Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because too many people equate one with the other like they're the same thing, and they're not. Auctions are one mechanism to allow bids to be opened up, but open bidding, really, to me, there's different degrees of it, right? Like you can open bids up more or less, right? Bids are not fully closed right now. Like even in these blind bid situations, to your point, there are, even in Ontario, people are entitled to a certain degree of information, although it's extremely limited, like the number of bids that are out there. However, to make things fair and transparent for participants, the more information available to them, the better. And the more you open up, the more open the bidding is. So absolute open bidding to me would be more like one of those out in front of a house auctions, right? Where everybody sees everybody and hears everything, and nothing is subject to confusion in terms of what's on the table.
Well, that's it. And I feel like, because in Australia, and what we know about Australia is that there's obviously more that we probably should know, but there's open bidding, or there's auctions and private treaty. And those are the two options. And I feel like Canada is trying to create a third option, which is a hybrid between the two, which my concern is that it will become even more hard to understand, more confusing. And it's also important to note that I believe it will, no, maybe it won't require choice. Again, it goes to like consumer choice. Like buyers sometimes don't want to open things up just as much as sellers might not want to. So that choice part is important. And I don't know if there's going to be an option there or choice.
Well, and so full disclosure to those of the people out there who may be meeting us for the first time, couple of things. First of all, we do run a brokerage. Second of all, we do run an auction platform and are proponents of a lot of this stuff. Third of all, and we've said this before and we'll say it again, we don't believe an absolute approach to open bidding or auctions is the answer. So when you talk about choice, we believe that consumers are entitled to and should be entitled to a choice in terms of how to do it. But what you're talking about, and you're right, is there should be a limit to where those choices begin and end, right? So when you've decided to participate in whatever this looks like, there needs to be a clear structure. If this is going to be something that's implemented, you can't just say to the seller, hey, you can disclose what you want and you can decide what everyone's allowed to see, have at it, right? And I worry that as of right now, that's where we sit with 11 months to go before this is going to be enacted, is a bunch of politicians saying, this is better for everybody. Let's just let people do what they want to do because that's going to get us our votes. And the elections are all taking place prior to this going into play anyway. So let the regulators figure it out, right? Let them figure it out, because right now, all we need to say is we believe in consumers being allowed to decide what they want to do, which is fine, but you've got to set rules for that. You've got to have a clear framework that that's going to live in. And I don't think that exists yet.
No, and I think that will be worked on over the course of this next year, is putting in place. You're going to have to.
Mhm.
And I think RECO, Real Estate Council of Ontario, within the province of Ontario, will play a large part in that. What it will look like is another question, but yeah, there's a lot of guidelines that will have to be put into place. And I think, again, a lot of people, like we did when we first started this auction with the auction company, is just we assumed that people would jump all over this. Consumers would be like, yay, open bidding, like let's just open things up, when in fact it's a new concept and you're selling, I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but one of the biggest, assets of your life, like you're not going to want to try out like a completely new method all the time. Like not a lot of people will jump to this without really kind of seeing how it's been done in the past. Like you got to have a track record for how it's
Right.
worked.
Well, and people by nature, whether it's consumers or realtors or anybody in between, they want what they don't have. They like to complain about the way things are, regardless, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be buy-in and there's going to be haters in whatever happens, right? And I think as a society, we need to take a step back and just establish, what do we want out of this? Like, what's the goal? What are we missing?
Mhm.
And what's a reasonable walk run for this versus going from absolute blindness to complete transparency? There's got to be either a transition from A to B, or in this case, from A to Z, or agree that maybe going all the way isn't the ultimate answer either. Like maybe it's just about providing a greater amount of the information that helps the buyer in this case, right? So, I mean, we can talk a bit about open bidding as a concept, why people want it, why maybe these decisions are coming out, and perhaps, may I say, spoiler alert, why some of those reasons are misguided and not the reason open bidding is a good idea. Because I think as a government, and the reason it's been a hot button issue with them is that this has been pushed as an affordability thing, right? As blind bidding is the reason prices are going up, or one of the contributing factors. And I think you are staunchly against that as a concept. And we've lived it. Like we can say this from experience of doing open bidding or doing an auction, at least as one form of open bidding. And as scientifically putting that against a blind bidding situation in the same market and seeing what it looks like, it's not the case.
No, exactly. I mean, there are situations, we always say this, like, and we've seen this for ourselves, where somebody is coming in like 80 grand higher than anybody else, for example. Whether or not an auction would achieve the same results, it's hard to say.
Right.
So it really depends on the property, and nobody ever knows for sure, but definitely the auctions that have been really successful for us, we can't imagine that it would have worked better with the closed, like it would have gotten low. I don't think it would have gotten higher with a closed system. I think it got the highest it possibly could.
Right. Like as long as you've got multiple people interested, you're going to, the certainty with open bidding, or with an auction in this case, is you're going to extract the best number that's out there until there's one person left, right?
Yeah.
With closed bidding, you've got the possibility of having one person going way higher than everybody else. And we saw a lot more of that in the super crazy periods, even when we first introduced this company. Yeah. But from what we see out there now, people are reluctant to go too far in these because they're nervous about what they might be doing and how far they might be extending themselves when they don't have to, right? When you see it, you're going to extend yourself as far as you're comfortable, knowing that that's where you have to go. And so, like you said, in some cases, it will be more expensive. In some cases, it won't. But to come at this from the perspective of open bidding is even a solution to help combat high prices is the wrong approach.
Yeah, wrong message.
They're not related. They're just mutually exclusive things. And I mean, that's a whole discussion for another day, but things like supply issues and things like economic conditions are going to contribute to prices more than anything else.
Right. And you know what, I'm wondering if, because I know we saw back in 2016, early 2017, like how the market shifted. And now again, the same thing is happening. I wonder if because there's such a short timeline between those two dates, that the next time the market goes up like this, if people aren't going to be as crazy, maybe not. Like I'm just wondering, because like I feel like people go through one full cycle of real estate, like they live one full cycle, but they don't ever get to see it repeat itself. So nobody ever knows like when it's going to come back and go down and all that. But I do think that if you've seen like two of them in a row, if you'll be more cautious and warn people, and I don't know.
I mean, I hope people in our industry will. I think those who are paying attention will hopefully learn from it. I just wonder how many people pay attention. Like I want to believe there's a lot of sophisticated people out there who are reading the stats and looking at the analytics, but the hope is that people will use past events to help guide the future, because it's happening. It is very cyclical. Like it's showing that. I mean, it's been as weird a last 2-3 years as could be imagined everywhere. So it's interesting that this is showing a bit of a cycle that, you know,
I don't know if it's a cycle,
not really
a
cycle,
it just
but
seems, no, but you're right. It seems like a cycle. I don't know from an economic standpoint if it is actually a real estate cycle, but.
Well, that's it. And you and I know that. Were you as bad in economics as I was in university? That was by far my worst subject.
I didn't like it.
He was such a good professor too. Farouk, I really apologize that I wasn't a great student for you, because Professor Zandy was fantastic and he did all he could, but that just wasn't my subject.
My knowledge went like the supply demand, I understood. That was it. That was it. Chart. Yeah. And then anything beyond that, I was like, meh.
Equilibrium made sense to me. Yeah. Like you want to, like you'll reach price based on, but like all the other impacts of things, I'm learning as I go now, but I don't profess to be even a moderate semi intelligent person in that stuff. But anyway, back to open bidding. So what else do we want to talk about here before I go on another rant about something?
You go for it. You're the ranter of this, and you put out a pretty good article.
Oh, another pitch.
Not too long ago about, just the whole idea of it and like kind of what grinds your gears and that kind of stuff.
What grinds my gears is, again, it's when people want to go out there, and everyone's entitled to an opinion, but it's the absolute opinions about this stuff that drives me nuts. And it's not just the affordability argument. It's really, it's things like who it benefits. It's what the risks of open bidding could be. It's the thought that open bidding is an all or nothing approach, which hopefully now is being, I mean, it's been mentioned, but it hasn't been, nothing's been dived into enough. Is it dived or dove? Nothing's been looked at closely enough, with announcements that are so vague that it's left everybody else to fill in the blanks. So for me, I believe what's needed now, and again, it's April 1st in Ontario where this is going to be enacted. And I've joked, and I'm kind of half joking, that happens to be April Fool's Day. And I wonder if this is all just pulling the wool over everyone's eyes, and they're gonna be like, nah, we're not gonna do open bidding.
You crazy.
But I think there really is the need now more than ever, and there has been for years, of greater consultation with a much wider group of stakeholders, right? Because there's a lot of, ourselves included, all these know-it-alls who think they know what they're talking about. And we're not the pros. No one else is a pro, right? We can draw from evidence from other jurisdictions. We can draw from evidence from what we've seen in our market. But truth be told, what we've done, which is actual open bidding in this market, is still such a small sample size that it's impossible to know what the greater impact will be when this is implemented. I do think, though, what we've learned in the time we've spent over the last 5-6 years of putting this into play is where the risks are.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what people, to me, they're not talking about that stuff right now. It's either this is good or this is bad, but they don't dive into the minutia of what the challenges are going to be.
Yeah, because if people can find a way around something, or like a loophole, like we see with any policy that comes out, there's always loopholes. But when you're talking about an open bidding situation where like you're literally relying on everybody to do things following the exact rules in order not to screw anybody over, I feel like we've learned all of those different ways and have implemented and like safety nets to ensure that none of that happens. And so we're taking it. I mean, it's only 5 or 6 years of experience, but that's a lot compared to like, especially because, as you said, we're like dealing with a very small sample size. But if you open it up and let's say a lot of people adopt it, that's gonna mess things up. And that's why, like we say, we don't take every single auction opportunity that comes our way, because we know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And we don't want it to be a failure, not only for us, but also for sellers and buyers.
And now, especially, like, I feel a responsibility to the concept as a whole, that if we have a big failure, even a one-off, it's going to impact people's views potentially. And maybe I'm too big for my britches here by saying this, but it's going to impact people's views about how to implement something like this. Like, oh crap, there's an auction that just happened here and it tanked. It's a learning experience, right? But you need a greater sample size of doing it. And that's why going from 0 to 100 right at the beginning is going to be tough. So there's a lot of things, I think, and a lot of questions with open bidding that we've learned. We can talk about a bit of the risks and a few of the things that, you know, if this is our open letter to, you know, those who are going to start consulting about this sort of thing, whether or not we're ever going to be at that table, let's put it out there into the universe. Some of the things that we've learned. To me, a strange, but I think this is the number one for me, is this requires the complete buy-in of the industry. This is not, even though it's designed as a play for consumers to support the consumer, and it is, and it's great for consumers, without an understanding and an education of the people who are going to be implementing this and a buy-in from the people who are going to be implementing this, you've failed before you've started, to me. And I know that's not getting into the specifics of what this is going to look like policy-wise, but we learned that with ours. I mean, when we first started, we were never anti-agent, like we are pro-realtor, but we weren't as focused on their buy-in. And I think the more that we've been able to engage with our industry and our colleagues in the industry, it not only allows this to succeed more, but it allows us to learn more about what it needs to make it better.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Because we tend to get very similar questions with each auction that we do. And for the first couple of years, the questions were really helping us develop the process even better. So that's definitely a really important point.
Well, and I think those are the types of questions that now people are going to need to be prepared for if and when this gets implemented, regardless what level of open bidding is implemented.
Right. And I think what's unique to us is the fact that we're kind of merging auctions with the real estate industry, whereas you've got auction companies on one side that aren't regulated, and we've got the real estate industry on the other side that haven't been able to offer this before. What's nice about being able to merge the two is that you're also very conscious and you're following the rules that we must follow as real estate agents. There's a lot of rules there, and there's a lot of just different factors in place that make sure that people are fully protected, even down to like the deposit, like it's held in trust, and like how to get the deposit out, if, like all of these different rules that we all know, and we kind of have, just kind of taken for granted because we just, live them all the time. But, that's why having an option that is regulated from an industry perspective, I think is a safer route to go.
Definitely. Like there's so many moving parts in a transaction. And even if open bidding in isolation is just a point in time in a transaction, and we don't even know if that's the case, right? Like when we started, our first auction was open for 3 days, even though the bidding only took place in the last 5 minutes, right? Now we've cut that down, but it doesn't mean that every part of a transaction under these new rules may not be impacting what open bidding looks like, or open bidding as a concept may not be impacting each of these different parts. One example of that is paperwork, something as simple as paperwork.
Yeah.
If we think about blind bidding right now, you're submitting an offer the traditional way. And everyone's used to how that works. And if you have to revise an offer, you submit paperwork again, you make the changes, you get it signed, you send it in again, and that's all fine. In an open situation, there needs to be an understanding of how that's going to look, because if the number or if the offer is being updated in real time, or if it's round by round or whatever, without that being standardized, how does that look? You're not going to be filling out 50 different pieces of paper every time you want to revise an offer, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there something standardized to it? If it's an open bid situation, is it a different set of offer rules than what we're used to the traditional way?
Yeah.
And if not, what does that look like? How do all the different variables of the offer change?
Yeah. What happens if somebody comes in like an hour in to reviewing all the offers, like we do right now with an offer date situation? Offers are reviewed at 7 p.m. And how many times does an agent come in at 8 say like, oh, is it too late? Can I make an offer?
Right.
Like, how does that impact things? Like all of a sudden another offer just comes in while everybody else is, there's so many questions.
There's so many questions.
Just, yeah, we can
and
be here
again,
for like 3 hours.
and your plug, I did put a nice long piece out. It's my first Medium article in a while. I got back on Medium. I'm hitting up that, so go check that out. But I do want to bring up more of these questions though, like without diving into the answers, but like who's entitled to seeing these open offers? If it is truly open, you've got CREA.
I would imagine, well, yeah, under the open platform, then would it be publicly available?
It would be everybody who's got access to realtor.ca, if that ever opened up that way. But otherwise, is it just you've got to be registered like you are now, which people don't even follow those rules to the T, right? Like we've got a stick handle an industry right now that for the most part follows the rules, but not entirely. So you take a 95% rule following base, and now you create a new environment that is going to have rules that are foreign to everybody. All it takes is a couple of people to not do it the right way, maybe inadvertently, to discredit the system as a whole, right? Because it's always that first or second disaster that has everybody up in arms saying this doesn't work, right? You want to avoid that if you're implementing something new. And that's going to be very difficult without very clear scenario by scenario approaches to things.
Yeah. No, there's a lot there. My biggest concern is just the length of time it will take to review offers, because how many rounds, like, do you limit to the number of rounds? I don't think you would. I think you'd keep going until everybody's maxed out. Yeah, well, that's it. Like if somebody comes in with a financing condition, but 10,000 more, and then somebody's like, fine, I'll take my condition out, but here's another, like, how many times are you going to go back and forth? Because like even now with blind bidding situations when it's an offer date, if offers are scheduled to be reviewed at 6, it's not odd for you to get a response or to have everything wrapped up by like midnight that night. Like I always go into these things thinking, oh, offer review at 6, we'll be done by 8. No, like it keeps going because we keep doing more rounds of these like blind rounds.
30 seconds before your irrevocable time is when you'll be done, if that.
Yeah. Even then, it's like, it's so stressful. Like so I can't even imagine when it's open, because like there's so many other factors at play and there's so many other discussions. And it's like, even people, like how much are people going to go up? Like with our auctions, people are going up depending on the price between $1,000 and $2,000. And people think that's ridiculous, but it goes pretty fast because people can jump and like have a high bid and all those kinds of things we won't get into. But if you're doing an open bidding situation without an auction, people could literally go up to $1,000, $2,000, $500, $1 at a time. Like, are there limits to the, the price ranges that you can go up? I don't think you could limit that. Maybe. I don't know.
What just occurred to me based on what you were saying?
Did you say, 3 times?
I think I said,
I know. That was a skip.
It must have been a skip.
Like you went,
I don't know. I mean, on the video, your face was frozen for about 45 seconds of your last rant, but I could hear you, so I just let it roll.
That's okay. All right, go on.
You've got an uncanny ability to freeze with a very, solid freeze. Like you didn't look weird. You looked like,
that's good.
You looked intelligent.
Okay.
Usually you look weird. No, I
I
think
think
it was
everybody
thrown.
always looks, everybody's always just like that or something.
Which says something that your face actually goes into that position while you're talking. Like,
No, it's more like, I don't know, everybody has this like universal, like speaking face that looks really weird. Like, like your eye,
what's
like
the speaking face?
it's like your eyes are like half closed.
Well,
and you're
you've
kind
told
of,
me about mine. You've told me that I get like, holy crap, look how many wrinkles I have on my forehead. Gee, look at that. That's
I
like,
know, it's intense.
that's
It's like a mountain.
that's like it's like
mountain.
spaghetti on my forehead. Wow, that's depressing. Anyway, as I was gonna say there, one thing that just occurred to me is that, and I don't mean to talk about our auction platform here, but as a mechanism that might tie into open bidding is we've kind of got an inherent escalation clause built into our auction platform with people putting their maximum bids in.
Mhm.
It's basically like an automated escalation clause. And I wonder if one of the mechanisms, I don't think this is the right answer at all. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but with open bidding, to your point of people going up by a bid and when do you improve and how long does it go? Maybe escalation clauses will become a larger part of allowing
Yeah.
open bidding to function in a more efficient way. The problem is, how do you then open up? Then you're making transparent somebody's maximum bid, which doesn't work. So
yeah, because then people will just start beating that maybe. And then
it's
it
just there's just so much to it. The moment it's a manual process, which it's going to have to be in the early going, at least when it's manual, like in terms of not being some sort of a platform where things can all just feed in,
yeah.
it's going to be very complicated. And
Also from the seller's perspective, I feel like that's going to stress the hell out of them because
Totally.
they're just going to be getting all of these random offers and like they're all going to have an irrevocable. So what happens if people are still going and like irrevocables are expired? Do you just take like an offer that looks really good at a certain point in time?
well, that's where I think one of the most important things of this whole concept is how are we going to dictate what the terms are in an open bidding situation? Like we talked about how much is going to be disclosed, that it doesn't need to be everything. But we also talked about the concept of choice and how risky it is to just say, hey, do what you want to do, be open, don't be open, disclose what you want. I think irrevocable is one of those things that should remain standard so that everybody participating is subject to that. You're right, though. If somebody shows up with something because they see where the open bidding is,
Yeah,
maybe,
or they want to be a bully and say, you've got 5 minutes to accept my ridiculous high offer,
right,
take it or leave it type thing.
And as a seller, where do you, I mean, everyone's got the ability right now to draw the line if they want to, but you're not going to walk away from a super good offer, even if it is a bully offer, right? If someone comes in and gives you an hour, but they're giving you $250,000 more than everybody else and they know it, and this is going to walk, if, do you have enough time to notify everybody else? Does it stay open or does it not stay open?
Do you have to, like, is there like a timeline that you have to give people?
Right. Like where does what is your ability to disclose what's coming in? If it's not automated somewhere as a listing agent, you've got a requirement and a duty to all the other agents, not necessarily to tell them what the offers are, although in this case, maybe you do because it's open. How do you do that? Like, are you just sending out email notifications every time a new offer comes in? And if they're coming in one after the other, like this will just be the stupidest thing anybody's ever seen.
Especially in a super hot market like we saw earlier this year, where there was literally 40 different offers coming in.
Right.
Imagine trying to handle, like, I can't even imagine how people handle 40 offers as a listing agent, let alone opening it up where you're probably getting like 4 or 5 iterations of each offer.
Right.
That's just a mess.
You're up to, you could be hundreds of pieces of communication.
And that's why, like, you look to Australia where it's like private treaty auction. Like there's no middle ground here. Like, because the reason why auctions are efficient, they're fair, and they're still transparent is that you are standardizing all of the terms. Like, I think you have to standardize the terms in order to make it even work. Like there's just way too many factors at play, like closing date. Like you know, if a seller has like, and how do they evaluate? Because like, it's even hard right now in a blind situation, like, okay, this person's giving me my closing date, the other one's a month away. Like now I'm having to evaluate which one's a better offer. If the one higher that doesn't have a good closing date is, you know, like how do you do that?
Right.
So
yeah. Conditions, deposit amounts, closing dates.
That's why auctions make it easier for sellers, because it's like they don't have to think about it. It's just they just keep seeing the price go up, and as long as it hits a certain price, like a reserve, then they're happy.
Right. Well, and
so
you need to have, whether it's a standard definition of open for everybody or not, in any given transaction. If you're not, so there's two things. There's subjecting everybody to the same terms as one option, which is what you're saying, that everybody's got the same deposit, whatever, what have you. So they're just competing on one, or everybody's entitled to a specific set of information that's consistent. Because like, are you only disclosing the price, but not the closing date and conditions and all that? Or are you only disclosing a couple of those things? Like, where's the line drawn in terms of what you're allowed to be open with, right? Like,
absolutely.
Imagine you're in an open bidding situation where you know everybody's closing date and you know everybody is firm or not, you know what their conditions are, but you don't know the prices. And you just submit an offer based on what you see.
Wouldn't help.
Right.
I think like price is the biggest factor, obviously, but even price without knowing where everybody's coming in condition wise.
Every variable makes it messed up, but that's the thing. But nobody's been clear yet. And I don't think they know about what open truly means in terms of what this is going to do. Like, if we're giving sellers choice, can you force them to open every aspect of an offer up? Or can you say it's up to you?
Or is it an option for them? Yeah.
Right. Do you disclose what you want to disclose and everybody's just got to be subject? Like, I think the only thing everyone's agreed upon is all participants are subject to the same rules. I think that goes without saying. But, and then if you're a buyer who doesn't want the transparency, I guess you just bow out of it, the same way that buyers now who don't like blind bidding won't participate. Or
like our auctions,
they
either make an offer ahead of time or they don't participate. So,
but is that even an option, right? Like, if you're doing open bidding, does that mean preemptive offers are open, or that's the opportunity somebody has to put their?
I think it's got to either be one or the other. Like, I think buyers just have to accept the fact or not, but that's what it is.
And where's that communicated, right? Like, this goes at the board level and at the marketing level. Buyers should be like, the way right now, buyers are not explicitly told, unless their realtor tells them, that there's an offer date or that it's a blind bidding situation. I feel like introducing this as an option almost makes it a new field in your MLS listing that says this is open, this is not open, right? Or offers are being held on this day, or they're not being held, or whatever it is.
Well,
right?
that I feel like should be in there already.
It should be, but I mean,
it's not.
Hopefully this is a catalyst to introduce that. It's just, there's that. And then even with open bidding, we're assuming that this is tied to a bidding date, like we're used to right now. Like, we're assuming there's a date where open bidding is going to take place, but is it just, you could have a listing listed at a given price, and if an offer comes in the traditional way, everyone's entitled to see it. And that's still open bidding. That doesn't have to be an offer date, right? So many moving parts. The clock is ticking on this one. I honestly could talk about this for days and days, and I hope that we do. I feel like we will be, maybe not on this podcast, but if there are people out there who've got opinions on this, and I hope there are, because this is a very important development. Like, this is one of the biggest developments, at least in Canadian and provincial real estate, that we've seen in quite some time. And it's part and parcel of the larger, biggest development, which is a restructuring of the Ontario regulations as a whole.
Well, this is the second round, but this is probably the biggest, just because of what is actually included in it. But I think the biggest challenge, well, not the biggest challenge, I think one of the other bigger challenges is the fact that, like, you're talking Canadian Real Estate Association, we've got like a provincial regulator, and you've got local boards. And so like, how do you get all of those to talk to each other? We already know, even through like showing platforms, is a challenge enough to try to like get everything to talk together, let alone, or data sharing. So I can't even imagine what it would be like to bring, even just have a provincial system. You'd have to, like, I feel like you'd have to have that.
100%.
Because agents are able to trade in their province, anywhere in their province. We can't go to Quebec or to New Brunswick to trade, which is a good thing. But if it's in Ontario, you have to have, it's got to be Ontario wide. And I mean, I guess that makes sense because TRESA or the regulations are Ontario wide. But again, the local boards would have to all be in agreement as well and have some sort of a system that speaks to everybody.
Well, and can I take this to another level that builds on that? Yes. Which we have not talked about this much. And this, I keep having these thoughts while we're talking, which is good. I'm glad we have these talks. But this is arguably, I think this might be the biggest issue of all this, which I've never even thought about, which is the data. There is so much information once things are opened up that are now going to be available that hasn't been before, and potentially restricted to some people, potentially not. Who owns it? How is it used down the road? Because this is valuable. This is the data everybody talks about. People using these platforms that some love them, some hate them, that are parsing data and that are scrubbing to find out information to help develop expectations and analytics and educate consumers. It's going to be out there now in theory, but only on a portion of transactions in theory, and only a portion of the data, who knows? But then where does it go? Like, we're doing a transaction. Maybe it's open to just the realtors who are involved. But then what are the realtors allowed to do with that after the fact? It was open to them and their clients. Or is this part of the larger play where, organizations like CREA are going to integrate this sort of stuff into their platforms, where the data itself becomes the real reason that open bidding is actually being pushed? Because now there's all this information that's available en masse that can be offered by different groups of people in different ways. Hopefully not, but probably monetized, right? Yeah. So we need to be careful about what the end game is for this stuff, because the reason that we're behind this, and I want to believe everybody else is behind this, is for fairness and transparency for the consumer. But there's a byproduct of that could really get out there, a lot of data that we're not really talking that much about. And I just hope it ends up in the right places. And maybe the right place is everybody has access to it, because we're also big proponents of the fact that our industry shouldn't hang our hats on the data is what makes us useful.
But at the end of the day, there's only one owner of the data.
Right.
And so that's the thing that we need to be worried about.
Right. Who owns it? What are they allowed to do with it?
And what are they doing with it? And how are they using it to increase their own income agenda, or their agenda? Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, that's the concern. And when you have,
that's scary.
And when you have a moving target right now that nobody knows in terms of what this data is going to be and who's going to be choosing to put it out there. Like, when you choose to put it out there, you need to know what's going to be done with it. Not just this is going to help me get more money from a buyer and a seller perspective.
And how are you going to get consent to do that?
Right. It's like royalties for a movie star, right? Like, if your sale is being used to generate reports for the next 5 years and all the offers that came on your house, I mean, maybe to the vast majority of people, they think that's happening already. And in some cases it is, I guess. But who owns it though? If you're putting it out into the public domain, I don't know. I just think there's a lot to unpack here, and we know, right or wrong, how long things take to get put together. And this is not a minor concept. This isn't one little line in an act or one little rule that everybody's going to say, okay, this is how I do it now. Like, this is a lot. This is just, if this is in fact coming into play April 1st, and I'm skeptical, and that's no disrespect to anybody. 2023. Well, hopefully not 2022, because that's behind us.
No, I'm just thinking if people are like listening in the future or whatever.
Oh, yeah. To all of you future listeners who are already doing open bidding and wondering what we're talking
like,
about.
Why are we worried about this? This is just normal.
My dad has been out there for 10 years. But if it is coming into play then, and this is such a huge undertaking prior to then, think about the other stuff like training and educating our industry on how to implement this. You can't just turn the switch on April 1st and say, okay, open bidding, go, have fun, good luck. You're going to need months and months of, maybe it's a special designation to allow you to do it, or some sort of a course you need to go through.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to get like a certification or something to.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, it's just one thing there. We figured that out. All
right. Whoever's listening who might have a say in this.
Yeah.
Work on the course. A master class on open bidding.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, good chat. It was a combination of chat and chalk.
Chalk talk?
Good
chalk. It was kind of a chalk.
It was a chalk.
It's better than a tat.
Yeah.
All right.
I hope so. Anyway, thanks for listening to us ramble. I hope it was helpful. I hope it just helped open up people's eyes to like, it's not just as you said, like flipping of the switch. There's a lot that you have to think about when it comes to this sort of a concept. What was that?
That's the light. I'm flipping the switch. I'm turning on the light next to my head.
I would like that's my finger.
There's no switch though. That's
oh, you have the light in your.
Okay, yeah.
What are you talking? How do you turn on a light?
For anybody who's not watching the video right now, you have to watch the video and skip to like minute 55 to I don't know how long we've been talking.
The link will be in the show notes.
The
link is in the show notes.
My ears are gone. I was asking him like, what's a linkle? Because he said the link will be in the show notes. I'm like, what is a linkle? The link will be in the show notes.
You're so
Yeah, you were just frozen. Was I frozen too?
Yeah, but I think it was mine because I just got a warning. My connection is unstable, so it's probably me.
That time the camera wasn't as friendly to you. I don't know about me.
There are so many reasons why you guys need to watch this video. So
just skip to the frozen parts. The audio is still working, so you'll just be entertained by it. I'm not even going to tell you what your face looked like there. Now you have to watch it all the way through to see what your face looked like. But anyway, we are now back on video for all of our episodes. So definitely, if you're not subscribed to Level Up for Realtors on YouTube, now is the time. There's no time like the present to catch up on all the goodies that we've got there, all the frozen headshots of weirdness. And and follow us everywhere else too, because we're just going to keep doing this. And if you follow us too late or subscribe too late, you just have that much more you need to catch up on. So be efficient.
All right. Have a good week, everyone.
Later, y'all.
Take care.
Yay, open bidding.
Woohoo.
Bye.
Level up.